This is the 59th OpenChain webinar. We are building the world's largest library of webinars around open source management, and that's a community effort. These are all open webinars. People volunteer to do them. We make sure anyone can turn up. I love the fact that our community does this. Now, this webinar is going to be a technical webinar, and it's all about data and curation and trust. Managing data is now one of the most important things, whether you are doing compliance or security or AI. We will have a focus on license compliance today, but the lessons learned will be applicable or useful for anyone doing open source and thinking about how to manage data. Before we get started, I will show our antitrust policy slide. As always, the full Linux Foundation antitrust policy can be found on our website. And if you're from a Linux Foundation member company, you can ask questions of our counsel, Andy Updegrove. This specific webinar has Karen from OSSADL. And in the background, OSSADL is one of the organizations that has done the most for complex, difficult, and boring compliance work to explain it, control it, give reference for it for the community, based in Germany, but providing resources online in English to the whole world. It's a remarkable organization, and year after year, I have been very glad to work together. Now, she's going to talk about sharing and reusing open source compliance information, and specifically, she's going to talk about how a certain project helps with trust in that data, which is exactly our field. So you can think about this as a way to continue our mission and moving from our level of standards, what, into the very practical level of how. Karen, I don't want to take up your time, so I'm just going to hand over to you. Welcome, thank you, and the stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Shane, for the introduction, and I'll try to be my best to be coherent, even though I had more sleep than you, and I could follow you quite well. So, congrats on that. Yes, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for having me today. I have talked about OSSelot in an OpenChain webinar before. I don't remember the number. I think it was 40 something. But that was a general introduction into the project. So today we'll have a bit more detailed look into what the curation process is like. And this was triggered by a discussion about sharing license management data in general. And with the OSSelot project, we have been doing this for almost 2 years now. So I think it makes a lot of sense before we go on within the community to talk about the standards we want to fulfill, how we want to do it, to have a look at what's already there, and maybe take that as a base and get started from that. I'll share my slides if I can. There we go. All right. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, they are showing perfectly.
Thank you. Well, if there are any questions during the talk, feel free to interrupt me either by just talking, or I'll also try to keep an eye on the chat. So feel free to ask your questions right away whenever they pop up. Well, before I go into the details, as I said before, I'll give some background and a quick introduction into the OSSelot project, which was really started from the question of why we should reuse compliance data. And I think that's fairly obvious. I don't need to go deeply into this within the community. We all enjoy FOSS because we can share existing resources. We don't have to expand our own resources into creating things that are already there and that are functional. However, we still have to do all our own compliance work at the moment. Even though most FOSS components, especially in the embedded Linux area where OSSADL is most active, are really deployed even often unmodified by a large number of users. And we've been asked for years when we tell people you have to do a license scan, you have to review the results. We've been asked by our member companies for many years, why do we have to do this? It can't be that we're the first scanning the Linux kernel, for example. And we always had to say, yes, well, everyone does it, but no one shares. So finally, now we can say, yes, everyone does it, but at least there's some people who share, so you can reuse some work. So why hasn't this been done before? That's one of the questions we'll ask today. Well, of course, we can't share all kind of compliance tasks. There's still a lot that has to be done individually. For example, to analyze what software is used in your product, deciding whether particular license obligations or licenses are can be fulfilled, so are acceptable to you for particular projects, then fulfilling license obligations, so creating the material you require and then delivering this to your customer. But there is a step in here, scanning and curating, where a lot of work goes in, and there we can actually share compliance tasks. So finding out which licenses and which copyrights apply to a certain package and extract that information to provide it as separate documentation. This is what OSSelot does. You can find information on the project page at OSSelot.org. The data itself is available via GitHub, the open source compliance group, and the package analysis repository here. This contains license and copyright analysis results for a number of packages. We're now at over 320 packages. Of course, some have multiple versions, so it's more than 200 unique packages. That's more than 1.5 million files that have been curated. That might not sound a lot, and I think scalability is one of the biggest challenges that OSSelot faces, but with now growing external contributions, this is growing. And even if it only covers a part of the required effort, I think it still helps to save a lot of time. Well, each of the packages, for each of the packages that's available in the repo, you can find a README with some metadata of the package, for example, download location, package URL, so also for automatic use, some reviews, whoever did the review, who created the original data, maybe some comments as well. Then you can find SPDX files in different formats. If one is missing that you would still like, let us know. But at the moment we have tag value, JSON, RDF, and YAML files. These have the information per file. And then we have also ready-to-use disclosure documents, assuming you use the package in an unmodified way, that has the aggregated license text, copyright notices, and acknowledgements. So you can just go there and have a look at what's already available. Now, as I said before, two of the main questions that have been asked and that maybe stopped this from this sort of project from being realized years ago are liability and trust. They're more or less two sides of the same coin. So on the one side, if a company says, okay, we supply legal information, because that's in the end what compliance data is, it is legal information. If we supply this, or if we provide this publicly to anyone, how can we handle the liability for that? How can we make sure that I don't know, someone uses this data and it turns out there was a mistake in it or a wrong interpretation in it, and they are taken to court and have to pay damages? How can we make sure that we're not liable for this occasion, however rare or unlikely it may be? And then on the other side, we have the question of a company who would like to use the data. How can they trust this legal information that's provided publicly? How can they be sure that it's of high quality, and that people have done a good job in curating the data? So we've talked about this a lot with different lawyers. We've had some thoughts on it, and these are the solutions that we came up with. So limiting liability can be done by licensing the data to give maximal rights. We chose CC0 1.0 licensing, and in this case, gift regulations apply, and liability only applies for willful intent and gross negligence, which we hope no one will exhibit. Also, I think, and this is a softer criteria, is that there are no known lawsuits with regard to supplying incorrect legal information in the FOSS environment. So it's not about not fulfilling license obligations, but to help people fulfill license obligations and provide resources. And OSSelot has the checklist project out there, if you've heard of that, open source license obligation checklist. So that is something similar that gives kind of legal advice by translating licenses into checklists. And also for that, there were no problems within the last years. So reservations against doing this and providing such kind of material have generally lessened. So basically, the argument here is the time was ripe. I can see there's a question that's going on. Can you clarify this liability analysis is under German law? Okay, yes. We talked to German lawyers about that. I don't know what it's like with US law or maybe British law, but I think maybe you can say something about that, Andrew, if that's different in different jurisdictions. Yeah, that's the liability issue. About trust, well, I think the best way to establish trust is to do good work. So data has to be curated conscientiously and diligently by people who know what they're doing and who also give their names, who stand with their names for it, so that you had someone there who knows what they did. Also, of course, there is a transparent review process. We'll go into that later on as well. And then last but not least, an organization, in this case, OSSelot, stands with its reputation for the quality of the project, meaning that we're fairly strict, or that we're not fairly, we're very strict about contributions. So we love contributions, but we're very strict about reviewing them and having people rework them. So you need quite a high level of tolerance actually to contribute to OSSelot. But in the end, as with many open source projects, the result is better than it would be if you just do it for yourself. All right, so let's have a look at how we make sure that we maintain this high quality of the curation process, high quality of the data. Well, at the moment, but that's not set in stone, we do scanning and curating with Fossology and its integrated scanner, along with scan code, which can be integrated into Fossology as well, as you probably know. We have another guideline saying to download the source code as upstream as possible. So if possible, directly from the project page or from the project's repository. And of course, we give the download location, so not using any kind of configured packages by a particular build system or anything. So that I think is important for making it able to be reused by as many people as possible. And then, and this is of course where most of the work goes in, the license findings and copyright findings are curated manually. And then of course for reusing versions, different versions, we can reuse data we've done before, but in the beginning, everything is checked manually using the available tools that Fossology offers, for example, the bulk scanning. Now, what are the curation guidelines in particular? So for copyrights, we have a look. I mean, if you've done any data curating before, this is nothing new to you. So any findings that were incorrectly identified as copyrights are removed. Content that is not part of the copyright notice, be it formatting signs, license notices, any kind of comments or anything, is removed from a copyright notice. And if the source code tree contains something like an author's file and a copyright notice points to this author's file, for example, copyright 2023 C authors, then we copy the content of this author's file into the package copyright text of the SPDX file, so that that's available as well. Now, just a quick example to have some pictures in between here. This is what you might find for copyright notices. So something that's just part of code or some kind of definition, something that's part of a prose text. And of course, these kind of things are removed from the findings. If we're not sure about a particular copyright notice, if that is actually a copyright notice or not, then of course we'll have an individual look into the file. You know these views if you know Fossology. So of course this can also be done with different tool, but that is more or less what is required to be done. I just saw that Andrew answered about the liability issue. The answer is not as clear as under English law, but it's likely that a court would come to a similar conclusion. Okay, so I'll make sure to phrase it a bit more openly for different jurisdictions. Thank you very much for pointing this out. Well, copyright curation is fairly easy. Licenses are a bit more complicated. Our general guidelines here are that review is done on file level. And of course, the scanner findings are then confirmed or corrected for each file where a scanner finding exists. Acknowledgements, individual license texts are added to the findings if necessary. And about main licenses, we only add a main license to a package if there is a clear indication that a main license exists. So maybe something in the README file says so, or we have one license or one copying file or similar in the root directory that states that it is the main license for the package, and then we give this as value to the SPDX tag package license declared. In case, and I think this is also very important for the question of trust and for accountability of the curation. In case a license conclusion is not obvious, then this decision, the decision that has been done, if there is some level of interpretation in there, this is explained in the comment section of Fossology, which then is given in the SPDX tag license comment. So this is maybe not something you would regularly look at if you use the data, but if you're maybe surprised about a particular finding or don't agree with one or unsure and would like to have a look, then you can have a look in detail into these license comments. And then this is true in particular for packages from some languages where you have information not so much in the separate source code files, but in a somehow given as metadata in one file in an aggregated place. And if there is such a file where someone has aggregated license data, then this information is not given for the separate files, but is given separately in the SPDX tag package license comments. The reason for this is that we've made the experience that meta information is often outdated or not correct. So we don't assign the meta information we find to single files, but in case it isn't correct, or because someone has already done the work here, or maybe it is the only information we have, we don't want this information to go lost. So we add it in this way. Now, just a quick note on how we do the license comments, because I think this is one of the hearts of the work that is being done. It's done with the heuristic that you find the information the file is, and then there's a quote of what the file actually says, and then we give a reason for why a particular decision was concluded. Let me give an example for that. That happens quite often. A license expression is given, but no version of a license is given. And then I think that is not even a far interpretation, but that is fairly common. Then we conclude that the version can be chosen freely. So we'd say the information in the file is, this file is GPL, and here no version of the GPL is given, so GPL 1.0 or later is concluded, and the user can then decide under which version of the GPL to use the file. Another fairly common case, a URL for the license text is given instead of the license itself. In that case, the URL is checked, and if it contains the license text, then we would conclude this license. Sometimes we even do some more research there and have a look at what date the file was created, so what the copyright notice says, and then have a look in the Internet Archive to see what content was available at that URL at the time that the file was created. Because often we find, of course, URLs that are dead. As you probably know, that happens quite a lot. And then, of course, this information is given as well, and a date is given here. Now, I think I'll give some insight into what we do with scanner finding. So, I mean, if you've done lots of curating, you probably know know the mistakes that scanners make naturally. But this just gives you an idea of what we do with OSSelot, how we correct these scanner finds, or how we handle particular cases. I think one fairly typical case is that a scanner finds an expression that is actually not a license at all. For example, this is something here, an example file. There's just some text here where I have to say I can't see at all why a scanner concluded a license here. This was actually the zlib finding of scan code that was given here. And of course, this is not a zlib license notice, so the license finding is removed. Then we have expressions that are actually licenses, but that just give some meta information about a license. For example, explain that another project is under a particular license, or explain their opinion about a particular license, but it doesn't give the file's license itself, which we have here. So we remove these as well. So here we just have a text that explains something about the GPL and some exceptions and their understanding of the GPL, but it's not, the GPL does not apply to this particular file, so we remove these findings as well. Then we have license texts, of course. So we have files that contain only the license text, for example, the copying file or the license file in the root directory. And of course, the scanners for these files find the respective license of the license text that is in here. However, the license text itself is not usually licensed under this license. Actually, most open source license texts aren't licensed at all. Some are, as for example, the GNU licenses. The GNU licenses all have these two lines there. Everyone is permitted to copy and distribute verbatim copies of this license document, but changing it is not allowed. So that's clearly a license. And in this case, this finding here, it's called license of GNU licenses in our Fossology instance, and the other findings are removed here. And with other, for example, BSD license texts, you would not have a license at all. And then, of course, individual license texts are provided. We have this in particular with BSD type licenses, where names of authors, of right holders are entered. We have imprecise findings. I mentioned this before, of missing versions, and then the version is added, or all versions are added here. We have dual licensing cases, where sometimes we have cases where the context requires or already has made a choice for one of the given licenses because of compatibility, for example. But as you know, files can be used in different contexts as well. So in any case, we conclude all applicable licenses, but if a choice has to be made, this is also noted in the as an acknowledgement. And then also to remember, dual licensing with more than 2 licenses has to be manually post-processed when you're doing curation with Fossology. Let me give an example here. So we have a dual licensing case with just 2 different licenses. So Fossology finds this, marks this with the dual license text, and then translates it into an SPDX tag value file with the OR tag here. But if you have 3 licenses, well, I took this as an example. We could discuss if this code is as is with no warranty, if that is a license, but let's just assume we'll conclude this as a license. Then we have 3 license expressions here, and of course Fossology can't make the decisions of how they relate to each other, or there's no feature in Fossology where you can enter this information. So this is what the SPDX tag value looks like, and this has then to be manually adjusted to account for the right combination here. We have license exceptions that are found as separate licenses or separate findings in Fossology, and we correct this to one finding, so that it's one license text and that it is not an and but a with expression here in the as required by the SPDX standard. Then we have external references. I've mentioned this before. External references might be URLs, might be something that requires an internet search, might be a reference to another file within the source code tree. And in this case, of course, the external reference is checked and the information is added. Here we have a typical case in this example where the external reference is Perl, just Perl. And the scanners already know the licensing of Perl, so they've made this experience, but maybe you've seen this for the first time, you're not sure about this. So this is something where we would just go on the internet and have a look and then note this research as a comment here. The last point I'm going to get into is global license assignment or partially global license assignment. As I said before, there is often information in a README file, for example, and but, well, I don't know, maybe a copyright file where it says all files in this subdirectory are licensed under the following license. And as I said before, we have made the experience, unfortunately, that that information is often not up to date. Because as it happens with such processes, or with this contribution process, there's no one makes sure that along with the files this information is also updated, or at least not in every project. So we usually don't assign this kind of information to files, or don't use it to conclude licenses for individual files. But we do add this information to the SPDX tag package license comments. And this is an example for something like that. This was like, I think, a license file in the root directory that just lists a number of licenses for different files. And as you can see here in the findings, of course, there's a large number of licenses which all don't apply to this file, so they're also removed. But then just the content of this file is added to the SPDX file. Now, I've said this a couple times before, SPDX and OSSelot. You might know this, that with SPDX, one of the challenges is, even though it has a specification, it has a standard, still people understand it and use it in different ways. Tools use it in different ways. So one of the things we did with OSSelot is, of course, try to adhere to the standard as closely as possible, but also explain very clearly what we use which tag for. We are currently in SPDX 2.2. Upgrade is underway, however. And another part that was important for us is that our SPDX reports are standalone documents to fulfill license obligations, meaning all license texts are included and not only referenced. And this was, I think that's an issue actually I have with the SPDX standard in general, that for template license texts or for standard SPDX licenses, they only reference them and don't include the license text themselves. We do include all license texts, and to make sure that the SPDX file is still valid, we add the license ref prefix to all license expressions then. So this is a point you might discuss, you might disagree with, but it was very important for us that they have standalone documents and work for themselves to fulfill information obligations. So let's have a look at what that looks like. Of course, you know, we have the creation information in the SPDX file. Here we enter the name of the person who has created the contribution. If we do have external contributions from someone who would like to remain anonymous, we will make that possible as well, and then the reviewer is entered here. We have package information, name of the package, of course, then the package license declared, as I said before, only if a main license for the package is actually declared. And then here in the package license comment, if available, we have these third-party notices or these meta information from the package about licensing. And then, of course, the heart of the SPDX report, file information. Here we have the concluded licenses, and as you can see here with the Apache license, it has the prefix of license ref because it is the license text is available as well within the file itself. And then with individual license text, you would have, like here with the BSD2 clause, they are followed by an individual hash. And here we also have an example with a license comment. As I said, with the heuristic I mentioned before, the information in the file is, and a quote, and then the conclusion we have taken from that. And then, of course, you know, there's the license information at the bottom of the SPDX file. Here we can find the license text. And as I said before, because the SPDX standard doesn't reference or only references template licenses and doesn't include them, we do include them, and therefore to still obtain a valid SPDX file, we have this prefix of license ref, and then we have the text in there. with individual license text, this is not so much of an issue. Now, this is what the OSSelot data looks like. And as I said before, I'd like to talk today about how it comes to be. So the contribution and review process. Of course, one part of the contribution and review process is to make sure that everyone follows these standards of how to do data curation. And this is very important, and will be very strict on this to ensure the high quality and especially also the consistency of the data, because otherwise the project, I think, doesn't have a chance to be successful. There was a question: upgrade to SPDX 2.3. Are you waiting for SPDX 3? Well, we'll do 2.3 first. I think that's not as much of an effort. That should be fairly compatible. And then in the long run, we'll go to SPDX 3 as well. But I think that'll be a bit more effort, as far as I know. But we'll have to look into that more detail. But 2.3 is in progress. All right, as I said, strict curation, strict review process. About some information, as I've given today, some more information is also given in the repository's README, also in the OSSelot wiki. You can find some information on the curation process, on the post-processing that is required as well. But I think best point to get started is to do a quick workshop on how we do the curation, how we would integrate new contributors into the process. We do have some recommendations for a first-time contributor. I think they're fairly obvious. Start with a small package. That makes life easier, especially with a limited number of different licenses. So with a small license variance, less than 20 could be a good house number here. If possible, if you are working on FOSSology or another tool that you're working on, if possible, grant the maintainer or whoever does the review access to your instance. That makes review a lot easier, or even do your curation on the project's FOSSology instance where the maintainer does have access. So that just makes communication and review a lot easier. Well, when first curation is done, well, before as well, get in touch with the project. But let's say you've done this before, you've maybe even had a workshop. Now you've done your first curation, then get in touch with the project maintainer to arrange review. Actually, there's a review process happening right now for an external contribution with the maintainer. So this is then something we'd like to do, or which is easiest, best done, especially for the first-time contributions, by just talking with each other. Contact us or contact the project anyway at info@osselot.org. Well, once you have all feedback included, the documents are exported, so the SPDX files are exported, the OSS disclosure is exported, and the required post-processing is conducted. As I said, for example, entering your name, adding the third-party license comments, adding information of the author's file, and so on, manually correcting the dual license finding of more than 2 licenses, and so on. Once everything is included, you've created all the documents, you've made sure that the SPDX files are valid, then you can create a pull request with a signed-off statement accepting the CC0 licensing. You can have a look at the contributing information in the repository for that, and then send your pull request. The contribution is then checked again, of course, by the maintainer. There might still be some minor issues to be corrected, and then finally, hopefully, the pull request is accepted. This is what it looks like, more or less. Then, so the pull request includes the artifacts, so the SPDX files, the OSS disclosure files, the README, and the signed-off statement. Then there might be some corrections in here, some suggestions for corrections that then have to be fulfilled, and then the pull request is accepted. So this was all about creating data, contributing, but I think we should still take some time of the time that we have left. I'll save some time for questions as well. But I would still like to look on the other side. So how can you use this data? I think this is important to keep in mind also if we talk about contributing, because in the end, it is for other people to use. And so we have to think of what different ways of using the data are available. Well, there's different, let's say, use cases. Let's start with the easiest one. The package that you're looking for is available in the required version. To find that out, you can go to the project page, for example, to OSSelot.org, to the data tab, and check whether the package is available in the required version. So just click on the package name, and then you see the available versions. You can click on the version, and then you are led to the repository where you can download the data. There's also a REST API where you can immediately query the data there. There's also some nice tools on the OSSelot project, on the tool section, where you can, for example, check what versions are available for a particular package. You can also check which licenses a particular package contains. So if you want to get an overview, this kind of data, this kind of tools are available on the OSSelot project page as well. So this is fairly easy, fairly obvious, but also this is basically manual steps. What happens if the package is available in a different version? So you can still, you don't have to do all the work yourself. You can still reuse some of the work that's been done. And the steps here are to first find the closest version of the required package that is available in OSSelot, and then upload the source code of that version into your Fossology instance. Download then for that version, download the RDF report from the OSSelot repository and import it into the source code upload in Fossology with the import report functionality. This then automatically clears the package, meaning that in the next step for scanning or clearing your own package version, you can use the reuse functionality of Fossology here. And then you have some files still remaining that you will have to clear manually. There was a question: do you have any SCA tool providers are planning to use OSSelot to improve their data? No, I don't know so far. If you know of any, or if you would like to suggest to anyone to use that, please go ahead. Of course, we're always happy if people also like to contribute back to the project as well. So let's have a look at an example for this for the second use case, so that it becomes a bit more usable, gives a better impression. I want to clear Bash version 5.2.21. Unfortunately, that's not available in OSSelot yet. However, I do find 5.2.15. That's fairly close. So I import the OSSelot SPDX file, or I upload the source code for 5.2.15 into my Fossology instance. I import the OSSelot RDF file, and this clears all 993 files immediately. Now, for the 5.2.21 version, the scanners find 1042 files with license information, but reusing the cleared version 5.2.15 automatically clears 95% of those findings. So 95% of work is already done for me here. And then I have 53 files remaining, and I think this is something that is really doable to clear them manually compared to 1042 files. So just to give an impression of what kind of reduction you can expect. Of course, that varies a lot from how many changes there were from one version to another, or how far apart the versions you're looking at are here. But this gives a general idea, and the packages I've looked at are all around this, so all in the 90% range of data that can actually be cleared automatically. Now we have another use case. This was all a lot of manual work. There's of course also ways to use the curated material automatically. As I mentioned before, there is a REST API for OSSelot, and this is just a quick code example how you could do this. Of course, I'm sure there's more elegant ways of doing this, but the idea is to download the curated reports of the available packages of the required versions, and for those where the exact version isn't available, list the alternative versions that are available. So here you can see, first of all, we get, if available, we get the XML report. If it is not available, then we query, and you can find information of how to do this in the OSSelot wiki. We query for this package which version is available and list this in a version mismatch list. So you can play around with this a bit. Have a look at the OSSelot wiki or at the tool page of the OSSelot homepage, and you can find different ways of playing around with the data and finding out if you have what you need here. Then another thing, and I think this points to a webinar that'll take place next week or the week after next week, about a layer for Open Embedded to use the OSSelot data, the meta OSSelot layer. Watch the upcoming webinar on that, or watch the tool section of OSSelot.org for this project that is really very cool, and uses Open Embedded, uses Yocto layers to automatically integrate and manage OSSelot curation data. So that's very cool. All right, I think we're good in time. We'll have some time left for questions. Let me quickly conclude all of this. So you've gotten to know the OSSelot project, which provides a publicly available database with curated compliance information under CC0 for frequently used FOSS components. I've shown you about our curation process and about our contribution process, and you can find the created artifacts, including standalone SPDX reports and disclosure documents, in the repository there. So I think manual input when reusing the data is still indispensable, but reusing data and copyright information can really tremendously reduce the time required to clear a software package or to clear an entire system. So here I'll leave this last screen up. Another pointer to the resources. You have the OSSelot project page. You can find news there, explanations, example use cases, tools, open to-dos, and so on. There's the wiki OSSelot page. There's some more information on tools and backgrounds, especially for automated use of the curation data. You can also find a guidelines for curation and contribution there, which you can also find in the GitHub README, where the data is available as well. If you have any questions, requests, contributions, whatever, feel free to contact us at info@osselot.org. So thank you. There's already questions coming in. How do you decide which packages to analyze next within OSSelot? Well, that's a fairly random decision. So basically, whatever seems useful. we don't have a clear decision process there. If someone comes up and says, "Hey, this is something we could use," then we use it. Well, we come from the Linux embedded area, so most packages you will find in there are packages you would find on a Linux embedded system. So there's no explicit queue, and especially for contributions, I mean, or for external contributions, it always makes sense to do work that's useful for anyone. So if you would like to contribute, then of course you would curate packages that you require that are useful for you, and then also share them with OSSelot. All right, are there any other questions?
I see a question from Fukuchi-san. He's asking if there's any products that you know of currently using OSSelot. So, have any of the users come back to you and talked about what they're doing, case studies or so on?
Not yet. Well, there's no products out there yet. But this is something that is on our to-do list, and we have a company that we're in touch with about doing this, and then having some references basically available for OSSelot as well. But this also, I think, has a lot to do with how much data there is available via OSSelot, and at the moment, it is not. Well, you couldn't do an entire system yet, but I think as soon as it's a significant part, let's say maybe 30, 40, 50%, then we definitely like to reference some projects that are using the data as well. Of course, if the companies are willing to speak out on that. But as I said, there's one company that we're talking about this with. All right. ScanOS is committing this and to contribute. Yes, that would be great, of course, to integrate this into tools. I think we've been in touch with the open source review toolkit as well before about integrating the data. So we'll have a look if that's going to happen. If you have any questions or if you require any other formats or anything to use the data in ScanOS, or if you have questions or just need to discuss the contribution process, please get in touch with us at any time. That'll be really good to have this integrated in tools as well.
I'm particularly excited there, Julian. Thank you very much for stepping forward. It's critical to build out vendor support, I think, to help reach deep into the market. So that's nice. I see a question from Marcel. So this is about other publicly available databases or disclosure documents that may deviate from what's found in OSSelot. So when there's conflicting information, is there a process to manage conflicting information?
Well, we haven't had a case like that yet. I don't know of that many other public databases that have such data available. We do have processes when we find conflicts within the packages that we would like to handle upstream. Of course, we get in touch with the projects and try to handle any open issues, maybe any unclear licensing issues upstream. And I think we do the same if we can find if something like this comes up as well. So yeah, if possible, handle it upstream. As you probably know, with licensing issues, it can be a bit sensitive. So we usually try to contact maintainers via email and not open issues on GitHub, because with licensing issues, they're sometimes not so keen to discuss this publicly.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Another question: do you have plan to create SBOM of binaries in some types, such as build and/or runtimes? I'm not sure if I understand the question. So you mean SBOMs for a particular build that was created from the source package? If that is what you mean, then no, we don't intend to do that, because this is very individual. How you build, how your compiler options are, what kind of hardware you're building for. So this is something that you would then could use the OSSelot data for to integrate or to get started from for your own project, but we don't intend to provide that. I think that would that would be too many individual cases. I hope that was your question. If not, you can correct me again. Then we have some ideas coming in. Tools have an integrated contribution process too. You mean integration into OSSelot?
Yes, maybe I need to, explain a little bit. I just, thinking loud that, like, let's say there's a tool that uses the OSSelot data. Then, of course, there are some other packages which are not yet there in OSSelot, so that whoever is doing the tool, let's say Scan OSS or whatever, that there would be integrated process to, upstream the curated data. Because, obviously whatever who is using the tool in a company, they need to do the curation as well, and then maybe this data could be upstreamed back to the OSSelot process as well, or project as well.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah.
As I said, we will keep being as strict as I said before with the review and so on, to make sure that the data remains of the high quality. So even if there's, it would be nice to have some help or some features and tools to do so. But I think that we won't get around some manual work as well, even though we always hope for it to automate everything. But yeah.
Well, the process there, it can mean, automated or human process as well. So
yeah. All right, we have some comments about using it in Yocto. As I said before, you should join us for the webinar on the OSSelot meta layer then. Oh yeah, Marcel already said. That's going to be very interesting for you in that case. All right, any other questions? Well, I can only recommend check out the data that's available, check out the tools that are available, check out the contribution process. And if you're doing any contributions and think this is a cool project, then get in touch with us and hopefully we can reduce some work.
Oh, we have one more question just to finish the webinar from Fukuchi-san. It just came in. Eclipse Oniro explained in a previous webinar that they use other distros' artifacts. OSSelot's more strict review process rule might be useful for other projects. What's your opinion?
Yeah. Yes. So I know about the Oniro project. They use, I think, mainly the Debian information. I think but they do review it as far as I know, which I think is highly necessary, because it's, as I said before, it's often outdated. So if we can, I think this is part of the effort here, or of this sharing license management data initiative, is to get such projects together and find a common understanding of what the contribution process or what the curation process is. So we're working on getting these things together here.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. Wonderful answer and wonderfully timed. We're at the hour. This was a great webinar, great audience, ton of questions. Huge thanks, Karen, as our speaker, and a huge thanks to our audience. And I will catch you all for the next webinar. Let's keep an eye on OSSelot. Let's see what other things are integrating, and let's chase Julian and see what ScanOSS does as next steps. Have a beautiful day all. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.